Main focus is, the season ahead of me, with the plans that we have and, getting to the playoffs and getting as far as we can and just, building that team camaraderie of who we are. So that's the main focus right now. Everything going to work itself out.
That man got paid. That was Rockets guard Jalen Green this offseason. He's all about the team. He's all about winning. And now he's all about money, at least for the next 3 years. Yesterday, as we were wrapping up our show, he signed a 3-year, $106 million extension. And Alperen Şengün, hours later, signed a 5-year, $185 million extension. Here's what those deals tell me. They are 100% committed to Alperen Şengün, and they are intrigued by Jalen Green, but they still need to see a little bit more.
And they're trying to keep him happy throughout the season because they could have very easily not done this. We saw the 76ers just do this with Tyrese Maxey, where they let him play out his last year. They waited until this offseason where they first acquired Paul George, so they had more cap flexibility, and then they paid Tyrese Maxey immediately. I think even it might have been the same day. So they could have waited. So they also were like, hey, Jalen, don't be upset this year. We're going to put pen to paper and give you $33.75 million a year a little bit.
Do you think he would have been upset? He is somebody that's been, in the past, publicly frustrated with criticism that he's received. We could just go back to this past basketball season where it seemed that he and certain reporters who covered the team maybe didn't get along. I'm curious if that would have been something that would have bothered him all season long. Whatever the case, not an issue the Rockets have to worry about right now. And I'm very intrigued by this season. I think most people are intrigued by what the Rockets can do this year. There's no hype attached to them like the Houston Texans had going into this season. I think most people are like, all right, possibly a playoff team. Let's see what happens.
I agree with you. It does make me feel a little bit different today, I'll be honest, that they signed these contracts, because the Rockets they didn't have to do this, and they invested in financially in 2 players. You can easily get rid of Jalen Green next offseason if you want. You can trade him for a superstar if one becomes readily available. You could move him for Giannis or someone like that if you wanted to, or as now the new rumor floating around from Kevin O'Connor is that both make me want to puke, but James Harden and Kevin Durant are eyeing Houston. That makes me sick to my stomach. I don't like the idea.
Ime Udoka's here.
I don't like the idea of that.
He's not going to want some flabby shell of himself in James Harden to come back. God, basketball season's back. I'm so excited. I get to jump on James Harden again.
Yeah,
I know Kevin O'Connor just switched jobs, but did that report come from 2016?
I don't know.
Was that a time capsule? Because that was the rumor in 2016.
But basketball's back because it's like you got all these new contracts, and then all of a sudden I start getting push notifications for Paul George out, Joel Embiid out, Kawhi Leonard out. Well, what a first couple games of the season we got here.
And I'm just glad a couple minutes into the season, which tips off tonight, that I got to take a shot at James Harden. Yeah, Udoka's not going to let that happen. I'm not concerned about that in the slightest. They might want to come here. I don't think Udoka wants them.
I hope Udoka does not want them.
That was he picked Fred VanVleet over James Harden.
That's true.
2 years ago.
But I was surprised by this. I just didn't think the Rockets were going to do it.
I hear you say you're surprised, and there's a part of me that feels that you didn't want to do it.
No. Well, Jalen's contract, when I saw it, I was like, when it first broke on the air, I was like, ugh. But then when you really think about it, it's easy to move on from. He's got the player option going to the 3rd year, where even if he doesn't play his best basketball, he's going to want to opt out of that contract, because we all know the salary cap goes up. Some, Charlotte Hornet, Detroit Piston team will pay him $45 to $50 million a year at the end of that contract. I love the Alpi deal, but we haven't seen them play basketball together a ton effectively.
Yeah.
They play their best basketball when they're not on the court together. So I wasn't sure that going into this season, they were going to say, okay, we're getting both these guys a contract without giving them both another year in Udoka's system.
I think the plan's this. They're riding with Şengün because they look at him and they see Jokic. Is that realistic? No. But, hey, he does have that size. He has incredible passing ability. I remember Sean and I, the first game we saw together watching a Rockets game, we were like, whoa, geez. It was against the Raptors. And the two things that stood out to us most were this insufferable little bleep Raptors fan who sucked and his family should be ashamed of him, and what we saw from Alperen Şengün. So they're committed to him. And Green, I think they want Green to convince them that he can do this for a full year and that he won't be, best case scenario, a future Charlotte Hornet who's getting paid $200 million to score all the points, but be rather inconsequential in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I think the extensions really do line up to what like you feel like watching the games, where you see the talent with Jalen Green, but you're not 100% ready to buy in, and that's why he got a 2+1 deal as opposed to a 4+1 like Alperen Şengün got, or at 4 years like so many of these other young guys that all got paid around the same time yesterday did. Where it's a lot of like, I guess Jalen Johnson's now making $30 million a year. Sweet, cool. That there is a little bit of we'll see on Jalen Green, and
for sure.
And honestly, the most surprising part might have been that Jalen Green signed it, because in the Tyrese Maxey example that Joe laid out, Tyrese Maxey knew that he was going to get a max contract at the end of playing out his contract. He knew that he was going to get the max after one more year. And he even stepped up his game and really deserved to where you're happy to sign him at the max. If Jalen Green thought that, he wouldn't have signed this deal. If Jalen Green and his representatives were confident that he was going to put together a Tyrese Maxey-like year and jump into borderline all-star consideration and have a year like that, he would have just waited and signed the full max at the end of the season. So that to me is also interesting.
So you don't buy the spin that Shams Charania put in his tweet yesterday, where he tried to say it as what did he say? It was an unprecedented contract. I mean, the first ever, because it is right?
Unprecedented.
But like the way he tries to is spinning that is that Jalen Green is going to opt out of this contract after 2 years, and be able to get to his next max even sooner, when in reality, I think it's more what Sean's laying out, which is maybe they know that there was just no contract coming, so it was this or that.
And his next max will be after his 6th year, and so his max will be 25% of the cap, whereas if you wait until after your 7th year, it's now 30% of the cap. So even he is getting to market faster, it is still not, he would make more if he just waited one more year. So there is a lot of minutia that goes into this. Maybe we don't need to get into all of the nitty gritty with Jalen Green's contract, but on its face, the fact that Shams Charania is saying that it's a unprecedented kind of deal, that is actually, and he's spinning it as a positive for Jalen Green's camp. It actually isn't, because you know who didn't sign an unprecedented deal? Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, Franz Wagner, even somehow. Those guys all just got full maxes.
And I'll give Rafael Stone credit for not giving Jalen Green that full max.
Or Şengün. Şengün didn't get the full max either.
That's true. That was a little bit surprising, but I guess it's because of the injuries, his size, or something like that. But they played this safe, and these players played safe with them. Yeah. It's a win for Rafael Stone. I'm not the biggest Rafael Stone fan, but I will tip my hat to this. And now we see what happens this year. I don't know what we need to see out of Jalen Green to be convincing him going forward. The problem is that month that he had in March, it's unfair to ask him to be that for a full season, but you want some percentage of that. And what's a realistic percentage of that? Can he be that 85% of that, 90% of that for a full year for the most part? And I'm still skeptical about that. I like that he actually answered all of the criticism. It's a rather soft market here, so it wasn't like it's that much. But hey, a lot of people were looking at him like, I don't know. I don't know, Jim. I don't know if I want to keep Jalen Green. So to that, he answered things the way that he did in March when they went on that incredible winning streak. That is a good sign. But how does he take that from the end of a basketball season where everything's a little bit fishy to an entire 82-game slate?
Yeah, and I also just don't think that that's who he is. I don't know. I think he can get close to that. But like To ask him to be who he was in March for 80% of the season,
The best basketball player of all time.
it's a high bar.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, you can't ask for that, but what percentage of that is actually realistic to ask for?
70%?
Yeah, I
What
mean,
is 70%? What is 70% of that? Is 70% of that like just a very good player, right? Because I think that's what everybody is a little bit, I guess, paused when it comes to going all in with this guy. You're holding and you're waiting for not another month of that because that is ridiculous and it's probably never going to happen again. That's Jalen sanity. Ha. Good job, Paul.
got it.
This, though, is someone that has potential and can do things sort of like this. So I don't know. I think it's 85% of that, which is, again, asking a lot for 82 games.
For reference, in the month of March, it was 27.7 points per game, six rebounds, 4 assists, and really the most unsustainable part for me is 40.8% 3-point shooting.
Whew.
That's the one where if you knock that down, even just to like 30, his numbers post All-Star break, 36.8. That's where it's like, okay, that's good. Just his post All-Star break numbers, honestly, if he puts that in, 23 points per game, 36% 3-point shooting, 44 overall, 6 rebounds, 4 assists again. Like that, I think just 23 points per game around there and average to above average 3-point shooting in.
I think I'm in on that too. The thing with Jalen Green that's also interesting is sometimes it's not just the numbers. It's like playing great team basketball. It doesn't have to show up in the stat sheet. I know there was some stuff floating around about how much better his defense has gotten under Ime Udoka, which that's great too. But
low bar.
It's still exactly
Yeah.
low bar.
As long as he's getting a little bit better.
Can he give me those numbers with Alperen Şengün on the court? Like, can he give me 35%, 3-point shooting, 23 to 25 points per game? Can he be that effective when him and Şengün are together?
Yes.
That's the real question.
Because you brought it up, and it was one of my pet peeves last year with the Jalen Green and Şengün can't play well at the same time. For 95% of the year, it was actually Jalen Green can't play well with Alperen Şengün on the court. Alperen Şengün played fine with Jalen Green on the court. It was Jalen Green couldn't play well. So that's really the situation is, can Jalen Green figure it out? Because when Şengün was out, the ball was in Jalen Green's hands. They're playing 5 out, and that's really what the kind of the engine of that run was, again, against like the Wizards and the Trailblazers and stuff like that.
Here's how that happens. He shoots 38% from outside. And honestly, forget the points per game. Forget all of that. I'm going to be focusing on what this guy does as a 3-point shooter. Mm-hmm. To what you're saying, Joe, yeah, I want to see a little bit more of the team stuff. I felt like he actually was better as a passer down the stretch for what it's worth, but he was making the offense basically all on his own at times too. And he will definitely, given that he had a month where he shot 40% from outside, feel unable to shoot a million times. And this is where me watching it and not getting angry at the TV for bad 3-point shots. I have flashbacks to James Harden, who was not nearly as good of a 3-point shooter as he thought he was. You got to be somewhat north of where Harden was, which was what, like 37, 38%, if you're going to be putting up that volume. And I think that volume is coming. So that's what I need to see from him.
Yeah, that post All-Star break, he was shooting 9 3-pointers per game. Pre All-Star break, 6.5. So he's shooting 6.5 at 30%. And then after the All-Star break, 9 per game at 36, almost 37%.
Oof. All right, I need a little bit higher. I need a little bit higher.
I mean, only a handful of guys shoot 40%.
I know, but if you're going to look, I feel like this is how it works. This is how it unclogs, is if Green actually becomes, I'm not saying Steph Curry, I'm just saying good to very good, as opposed to being in that, 30%, Jesus. I didn't know it was that bad.
30%, thank God he was only shooting, even 6.5 per game.
30 is awful, That's like Russell Westbrook numbers.
Honestly, I think we're going to get more annoyed with Jalen at times this year, especially with the player I'm most excited about this year is Reece Shepherd. And if he's out there just like
so racist,
silky smooth 3-pointer, just like knocking him down, and then Jalen's just yanking up bad threes all the time, I'm gonna get so annoyed watching.
By the way, Steph Curry the entire season shot the exact same percentage from 3 that Jalen did in March. They both shot 40.8.
My gosh.
So Steph was 40.8 all year,
Steph is so good.
and he was shooting 12 per game.